Hello, I'm Michael Beam.
And I'm Chris Pierce.
And this is the Linux Show. Unfortunately, we taped last week. However, the tape in the camera has been ruined.
It was nasty. It had nasty little scan lines and it skipped frames. And ugh.
So in any case, we were not able to bring you the open source news last week, but here is what happened. September 5th, AMD announced plans to release the ATI Radeon drivers, which is a good deal. KDA 4 has been delayed till December. Big surprise there. openoffice.org announced that IBM will be joining them and helping them develop the OpenOffice suite.
And SCO filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Awesome.
Awesome indeed. Well, that was the news last week. Let's take a look at what we've got going on this week.
Screen is frowning. There we go.
There we go.
Alright, do you have the first story?
You go ahead.
Alright, well, September 20th, GNOME 2.2 came out. That was nice. Has a couple small
2.20.
improvements. 2.20, pardon me. Came out, had a few small improvements. Was nice to see GNOME up there and competing with KDE.
Yeah, GNOME 2.20. It has all the improvements of 2.18, and they added newer GTK features.
Oh, that was nice. The GTK Plus.
Yeah, probably the biggest.
That's probably their biggest.
The biggest thing they changed.
Really
GNOME
good.
2.20, I believe, will be the GNOME that will come standard with all Ubuntu 7.10 releases. Ubuntu 7.10 is coming up. It'll be a pretty big deal when it comes out, and it will run GNOME 2.20.
I personally use Kubuntu. I'm a big KDE fan. Aside with Linus Torvalds on this one, I like the looks. I also like the control center. That's one thing GNOME has always been missing, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Also, last week we had. This is actually rather interesting. According to most of the news sites, the first ever GPL lawsuit in the U.S. That you heard me right. That is the first time that the FSF, that's the Free Software Foundation, has gone through with a lawsuit on GPL software. Before, they sent letters and generally companies would comply, but this time against a company called Monsoon Multimedia has been accused of using BusyBox without giving out the source code as they were required to do by the GPL2, and they haven't. And this one will be the first one that the FSF will actually take to court.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, BusyBox was headed by a lawyer, right?
No, the Monsoon Multimedia.
Monsoon, okay, well there you go.
Is actually the CEO of the company, I believe, is actually a lawyer. So he obviously has something going on legally. He wouldn't just blatantly disregard a license.
Yeah.
Then again, he might.
He might have an ace up his sleeve. I guess it'll be very interesting to see how this court case pans out.
It'll definitely be interesting to see the first one.
In other news, the OSI calls for major revisions in the Microsoft permissive license before it will be considered an open license. A lot of complaints about that where it was a very strict, very oppressive license, and the open source community found it rather hypocritical to call it permissive when it was very much restricted.
Yeah, the OSI, of course, is the open source initiative, and they, as far as I could tell from reading up on them, they were trying to give the Microsoft license a fair throw, despite it being called Microsoft.
Indeed.
Which is admirable. However, not surprisingly, the Microsoft permissive license is not quite as permissive as it claims.
But who would have thought?
It won't be considered open source for without some major revisions.
Indeed.
All right. Our other story this week is that OpenOffice 2.3 came out. It's not a huge deal, but it has some added functionality. It's nice, and it's something that pretty much any Linux user should look into upgrading as soon as they can.
Indeed. One nice thing about OpenOffice is it has the export to PDF. I find that entirely too useful.
Useful thing.
Indeed. Now, OpenOffice in the past has been accused of being bloated and slow because it runs off the Java platform. What have they done to improve this, if anything?
Well, Chris, the actual OpenOffice doesn't run off the Java platform, but large chunks of the program use it,
Right.
especially in the database, OpenBase, and I
Right.
mean they've done stuff. They've slimmed OpenOffice down. OpenOffice, it is run by Sun Microsystems,
Right.
which of course they write Java, so it does use Java.
Makes sense.
But they've slimmed it down. They've done what they can to speed it up. It used to not be very, very useful, but I mean, recently it runs about as good as Microsoft Office. I mean, you can
Made a
do
lot of
almost
progress,
all
for
the
sure.
same stuff
It
with it.
still has a few problems writing docs. I've noticed Word will say that the file's corrupt pretty often.
Yeah.
All the same, it reads them very, very well, next to perfectly in my experience.
Yeah.
And I've never run into a problem I couldn't fix with OpenOffice. So, good news.
Definitely,
OpenOffice.
OpenOffice, definitely one of the biggest, most important packages just on the user end of the open source community.
Most definitely.
I mean, there would be a lot fewer Linux users if there wasn't some kind of compatible Office program that they could use for all the stuff that you need it for.
Right.
So that's the news this week, and we're sorry for the confusion last week and not posting, but we will try to be back next week and give you the open source news as up to date and as often as you need it. I'm Michael Bean.
And I'm Chris Pierce.
That was the Linux Show.